In this lecture, we are going to walk through the major savings accounts that show up on the test. The ones built specifically for education, for individuals with disabilities, and for gifting to minors. By the end, you will know which account fits which goal, and the tax rules attached to each. So why are there several different account types here instead of just one? Because Congress designed each one to solve a different problem. Some are for college, some go further down to K through 12, some are for disability-related needs, and some are just general custodial accounts for a child. The thread that ties most of them together is the same. Contributions go in, the money grows, and if you pull it out for the right kind of expense, it comes out tax-free. That last point matters for suitability questions on the test. When you see a client asking about education savings, the answer is almost always going to be one of these tax-advantaged accounts, not a regular brokerage account. Let's start with the most important one, the 529 plan. These are sponsored by states, not by the federal government. Each state runs its own. You can find them in two flavors: a savings plan, where your contributions are invested in mutual fund-like options, and a prepaid tuition plan, where you essentially buy tuition credits today at today's prices. We'll come back to that distinction in a moment. The big selling points of a 529. You can put in serious money, often $300,000 or more depending on the state. And there are no income limits on who can contribute. A high earner can fund a 529, which is not true for some other accounts. Now the tax mechanics. Contributions are after-tax money, meaning you don't get a federal deduction when you put it in. But once it's in, the growth is tax-free. And if you take it out for qualified education expenses, it stays tax-free. What counts as qualified? Tuition, fees, books, room and board for college, and up to $10,000 per year of K through 12 tuition. Here's the part you want to remember. If you take the money out for something that isn't a qualified expense, the earnings portion gets taxed as ordinary income. And on top of that, you pay a 10% penalty. The original contributions come back to you with no penalty, but the growth is hit twice. That 10% penalty on non-qualified withdrawals is a classic test point. A few rules around control. The owner of the 529 keeps control of the account. The beneficiary, the kid the account is for, doesn't get to take the money out and spend it on whatever. The owner can also change the beneficiary, as long as the new one is a family member. So if your oldest gets a scholarship and doesn't need the funds, you can move the account over to a younger sibling. There's no age limit on the beneficiary either. Newer rules even let you roll a 529 into a Roth IRA in some cases, after a 15-year holding period and within limits. And on the gift tax side, you're allowed to front-load 5 years of gifts in 1 year, which lets grandparents drop a large amount in at once. Back to those two flavors of 529. A prepaid tuition plan lets you lock in today's tuition rates for future use. The trade-off is that it's usually tied to specific schools that participate in the plan. So if your child goes somewhere else, the value may not transfer cleanly. A savings plan is more like a regular investment account. You pick from investment options, and the value moves with the market. There's no guarantee, but there's no school restriction either. The savings plan version is more common today because it's flexible. Prepaid plans give certainty on tuition, but can fall short on other costs like room and board. Now, the Coverdell Education Savings Account. You may also see this called the Education IRA in older material. The defining feature is the contribution limit, which is just $2,000 per year per beneficiary. That's it. So compared to a 529, this is a much smaller account. There are also income limits on the contributor, so high earners may be phased out. And there are age rules. You stop contributing once the beneficiary turns 18, and the funds need to be used by age 30. Otherwise, you face taxes and penalties. The advantage of a Coverdell is flexibility on what it covers. You can use it for both K through 12 expenses and college, and the investment options inside are typically broader than what a 529 offers. Let's put them side by side because the test loves this comparison. Contribution limits. 529 is high, often hundreds of thousands. Coverdell is $2,000 a year. Big difference. Income limits. 529 has none. Coverdell phases out high earners. Age limits. 529 has none on the beneficiary. Coverdell requires the funds to be used by age 30. Investment options. 529 is limited to whatever the state plan offers. Coverdell is broader, more like a brokerage account. State tax deduction. Many states give you a deduction for 529 contributions. Coverdell, no. So, the simple way to remember it, 529 is bigger and more flexible on amounts. Coverdell is smaller but more flexible on how the money is invested and what it pays for. Switching gears to ABLE accounts. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and these were created for individuals with disabilities. The qualifying rule you want to remember: the disability has to have onset before age 26. That's the threshold the test will check. The tax treatment is similar in spirit to a 529. Money grows tax-free, and withdrawals are tax-free if used for qualified disability expenses. The annual contribution limit is $18,000 in 2024. There's a critical practical benefit here. Many disability-related government benefits are means-tested, meaning if the individual has too many assets, they lose the benefit. ABLE accounts let the family save up to $100,000 without affecting that eligibility, which is why these accounts exist in the first place. Now, UGMA and UTMA. These come from the Uniform Gift to Minors Act and the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. They're custodial accounts you set up for a minor, with an adult acting as custodian until the child reaches the age of majority. The thing the test wants you to know, and it traps a lot of students, is that these are not tax-advantaged. There's no special tax treatment, no tax-free growth. They're regular taxable accounts that happen to be in a child's name. Two more important features. The gift is irrevocable, meaning once you put money in, it legally belongs to the child. You can't take it back. And when the child hits the age of majority, 18 or 21 depending on the state, they get full control. They can spend the money on whatever they want. There's also a financial aid downside, because the account counts as the child's asset, which weighs more heavily against aid eligibility than a parent's asset. Even though UGMA and UTMA are not tax-advantaged, there are some special rules on how a child's investment income gets taxed. This is the kiddie tax. It's a tiered system. The first roughly $1,300 of the child's unearned income, that's interest, dividends, capital gains, comes out tax-free. The next $1,300 or so is taxed at the child's own rate, which is usually low. Anything above roughly $2,600 gets taxed at the parent's rate. That's the part that catches people. The rule is designed to stop families from shifting large amounts of investment income to a child to dodge taxes. The kiddie tax applies until age 19 or up to age 24 if the child is a full-time student. Let's tie it together with the suitability angle, which is how this content actually shows up on the test. If a client wants to save big for college with high contribution limits, the answer is a 529. If they want broader investment choice and they're saving for both K through 12 and college, Coverdell. If they have a family member with a disability that began before age 26, Able. And if they just want to gift money to a minor without restricting it to education, UGMA or UTMA. But understand, it's not tax-advantaged. Match the goal to the account. That pattern is exactly how the test will frame these questions. Quick wrap-up. 529 plans, high limits, tax-free for education, state-sponsored. Coverdell ESAs, $2,000 annual limit, age restrictions, broader investments. Able accounts, for disabilities with onset before age 26, tax-free for qualified disability expenses. UGMA and UTMA, custodial, irrevocable, and not tax-advantaged. And the one to lock in, a non-qualified withdrawal from a 529 means taxes on the earnings plus a 10% penalty. That's the lecture. Move on to the practice questions when you're ready.